So today I want to talk a little bit about why I think that digital microscopy is never going to entirely replace the traditional analog way. What am I even talking about here? What do I mean? Well, I want to give you this as a demonstration here. This is the head of a fly, and what we have right now is, of course, a digital image displayed on your computer screen. And there's been the question, even I received even some emails some time ago where people were asking me, well, everything's going digital these days, everything's done over cameras and computers, and is this also going to reach microscopy sooner or later? So in other words, maybe in the future we're not going to be looking through eyepieces anymore, but everything will be done on a computer screen. And do you think that this is ever going to happen? Is basically the traditional way of observation going to be pushed aside by the increased digitalization? And I'm going to demonstrate to you today that I don't see this happening in the very near future, okay? And I would like to use this as an example here. This is the head of a fly, as I just mentioned, and obviously you're watching this on the computer screen, so I've got a digital camera connected here, pretty good one actually. It's a Canon D90. So it's a fairly large sensor, but look what happens when I look at the mouth parts as the so-called proboscis of the fly, and you're going to see that it's pretty washed out and way overexposed. So what I have to do is I have to turn down the light intensity until we're able to see it properly. Now it's more or less properly exposed. There's dots here, that's all dirt and dust on the microscope slide. But look what happens when I move back to the head. And of course, the head is way too dark. So of course, that's to be expected. You say, well, but when you look through the eyepieces of the microscope directly, then you're actually able to see that both the head and the mouth parts here are actually both quite well visible. Okay, because the human eye has a far greater so-called dynamic range, so we are able to perceive the differences in brightness and darkness, a much wider difference in brightness and darkness, much more than the camera is able to capture, right? So I have to basically go up with the brightness intensity, light intensity over here, and then of course it's way too bright again here. And the human eye is much more flexible in that sense. It's able to adapt much better, and for this reason, I do not see that cameras are ever going to, at least not in the near future, going to replace entirely the direct observation. Of course, cameras and digitalization has replaced microscopy in many areas already. There's no question. But if you just look at the microscope through a microscope eyepiece directly, then it just looks better. It's more immersive, more impressive, and computer screens are nice because it's also quite convenient to look at them as we're doing right now, but there is a loss in image quality. There's no doubt about that. So what we can do, just because we're just observing right now, let's go up a little bit with the magnification here. I have to refocus. Of course, details start to emerge quite nicely. Let's adjust the brightness again here using, and this is how it looks like. It looks quite decent. I think that might be now properly visible, everything. Now let's have a look at the head itself. Let's go back here, and what do we see? Nothing, right? But if I look through the microscope eyepieces, it's fine, right? So this is simply something where I say that because I guess maybe some people are a little bit worried that the traditional way of doing microscopy is going to be kind of replaced also by computers in the future. But technology is not there yet, right? And observing specimens directly through the microscope is still going to stay with us for the foreseeable future. I'm quite sure about that. But this dynamic range limitation of digital cameras, that's of course something that's very noticeable, especially if the images have a very high difference in contrast, like example, this head of a fly here. So what do you actually do therefore when you prepare those specimens? Normally you have to bleach them or kind of remove the pigment or brighten them up so that they become more and more transparent, so that there is actually not such a big difference in bright and dark areas. So, I mean, if you want to, of course, we can go up yet further. Of course, the higher we go up with the magnification, the darker it becomes. I have to turn up now. I'm really, quite a bit. Yeah, we can still see that some areas are fairly dark, right? But let's have a look again at the mouth parts here. Yeah, look at this. Yeah, of course, way too bright. Huh? Yeah, so this is something, simply something that I wanted to share with you today, and especially microscope cameras with a small sensor, right? Sometimes have some dynamic range issues. However, there's of course a possibility to overcome that. You have to do high HDR imaging, high dynamic range imaging, and this is where you take several pictures of different exposure, and then allow the computer to put it together so that all parts are properly exposed. So there are some kind of workarounds, but not with video. Right, but you can do those workarounds to exist with individual photographs. I think I'm just going to leave it at that. Yeah, hope that you found the video interesting. In any case, and yeah, you can of course try your own specimens and test your own camera a little bit on to what extent it's able to capture large range, high dynamic range or not. All the best. Happy microbe hunting. Hope to see you in the next video. Bye bye.